Good afternoon and welcome to our 19th annual exhibit of hydrogen and fuel cell technology. We've been here since 1995 discussing this very important contribution to our coming energy economy. We are going to be discussing one of the key questions, which is how we get government and industry to bring new technologies to market. Very, very important issue. You can be sure that we're going to debate this with some controversy because there are controversies. To do that, I'd like to invite the guests up on the stage. We have three. We're going to be talking to Adrian Richardson from British Gas, to Bert de Colvenaer, who's Executive Director of the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, and to Guido, Gummert, Managing Director of BAXI INNOTECH. Welcome. So this is a very broad and general question, and I suppose I'll turn first of all to Bert, because you're the European perspective on this whole issue, and simply repeat the question as a provocation. Come on, how do we get government and industry to bring new technologies to market? How do we do it?
Not preempting the full discussions we're going to have here with the two other colleagues, I believe that basically there are two main issues where government and industry have to be made aware, made awake about. One is, of course, the policy area where the government has the largest impact, defining what is necessary for the societal challenges, which is specifically from the European Commission is quite often used. And secondly, from the industry perspective, they need to find the market, they need to find the market mechanisms and need to get appropriate help, funding, to bring everything forward. So I think from government policy, from industry, demonstration activities, money, activities like that.
This is, of course, now I'm going to have to ask a second question as a follow-up immediately. Let's make it very specific. We have fuel cells. We have all this technology here, and its implementation is difficult. So we seem to have practicable technologies here. What's keeping us from its implementation on a European perspective?
I think at the moment, and not to be too much provocative, we have a solution for which the problem is not maybe at the biggest scale yet. People will move once they have a certain need. And we have a need, and if you open the newspapers, what you can read now is the first line is always about the economical crisis, the banking, which is not working well. The second issue in the newspapers is usually about jobs and employment. And somewhere lower in the line is environment. Now, the technology we have here, fuel cells and hydrogen, in both stationary applications and mobile applications, is a solution which allows for use of renewable energy sources, will reduce your emissions, and with a huge efficiency. So basically we have to try to put these two factors together, trying to sell the technology as a solution for the two issues which I referred to before, employment and economical crisis. As I referred to last year in one of my presentations there, is that in Europe we're spending $500 billion every year to buy fossil fuels. Why don't we use part of that money to reinvest in capturing renewable energies for the moment we need, and for that fuel cells and hydrogen is one of the key technologies. Again here for both stationary and transport applications. So I think if we see the full spectrum and if we see the clear problem which we need to address, then I think our solution will be perfectly fitting.
Okay, I'm going to return to this topic. We have a solution for which there is no immediate problem.
I don't say the problem is just not of that huge scale yet. There is a problem.
Yeah. But I wanted to repeat this question, Adrian. You know, this is what Americans refer to as a Yogi Bear approach to problems and solutions. If the honey's there, we don't have to worry about anything else. You're in the British gas industry, and many people would say, well, you know, you guys, you have it good. You know, there's a steady revenue, there is a supply of natural gas. So the next question is, you know, why bother? Why bother with the fuel cell industry? So why? Microphone? Take mine.
Thanks. Thank you. Do you want the broken one? There you go. Yeah, so from a UK perspective, I guess we're a participant in the energy supply market, and I think it's widely accepted and becoming increasingly accepted that the old utility model of supplying units of energy to consumers is dead, or at least is dying. And the challenge is for us as energy suppliers is finding ways of competing and succeeding in a market where ultimately public policy is going to be driving consumption of energy down, and quite rightly so. So we need to think about new solutions, new propositions for customers that allow our customers to reduce their energy consumption, to reduce their carbon emissions, and do that in a way that is economically viable. And I think this comes back to your first question about, how do we get new technologies into the market? From a consumer's perspective, fantastic. A fuel cell, potentially is a wonderful product, saves them energy, reduces their bills, reduces their carbon emissions. They can do something green, but it has to be done on an economic basis, and I think that's where the challenge is initially. And we need to think about how we can address that as an industry to find ways of bridging that valley of death between where low volume R&D type products are at the moment through to mass manufacture. And one of the things that we're doing at the moment is engaging in the Ennefield program, which is aimed at helping us bridge that gap.
You just mentioned here, is the microphone working now? Yes, it is. The Valley of Death. To clarify, ladies and gentlemen, we are all in the Valley of Death. Did you know that? Where is it? And in this Valley of Death, we have people like you, Guido, who's from BAXI INNOTECH. You have these units up and running. And you are looking for direct cooperation from the utilities, for example. How is that working?
It's not only the utilities. The first step is that the European Commission wants to have stronger environmental regulations. That's very important. And because of that, they have understood that to implement that in the market, it is necessary to help the industry to develop new products and take a little bit of the risk away from the industry. And this is something what is very good in the Ennefield program. It helps for demonstrations because the technology is developed. During the last years, we have developed the technology to a technical stage which is very, very close to market. And what we are still in is we are at high cost because we are not manufacturing the system by ourselves. We have suppliers. They want to have stable conditions of the market. They want to see that the market is upcoming before they do the investment. And programs like Ennefield help us to establish the technology, to give our market partners a good feeling about the technology, train the installers, discuss the business models with the wholesalers, with the utilities, and make sure through the communication that everybody understands the business. And that gives you a good feeling, and then you invest. If you're scared about the technology, you don't invest. Therefore, Ennefield is a very, very important project for the demonstration of the technology. And interesting is, when I presented the project in front of my board, the question was not, how much money do you get from the European Commission? No, they asked, who's participating? And in this program, all the European boiler makers are participating and working together in that program. And this is something what is very, very important.
And now you've mentioned twice the Ennefield project. Perhaps just a general introduction for the audience, Bert. What is this Ennefield project?
So I will, the joint undertaking, the fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking, is the implementing body of the European Commission for hydrogen and fuel cell activities under the 7th Framework Programme, running from 2008 to 2013. As part of our normal activities, which is basically grant for specific proposals, we have selected Ennefield project, which is a project which the joint undertaking we are funding, a total cost of that project is about 50 million euro. In that project, with that total budget of which we funding about half of it, we will demonstrate 1,000 micro CHP units over 12 European countries by 9 manufacturers. So this project is basically trying to, it's a learning activity, a market learning activity, a real practical work on what is the market conditions, what are the criteria necessary, how do we have to specify these units, what is the actual benefit to the customer from an environmental benefit, from a cost benefit. We're going to develop on the regulations and standards to make sure that these are a little commonized within Europe. And also we would like to see to the regulations, codes and standards. What has just been said, the technology is already quite far developed. But what is so key on this project is that we have 9, and in principle, competitors who are working together, trying to demonstrate a product which is almost commercially ready on what it needs to do to be completely market integrated. So one of the achievements I think the joint undertaking already can bring forward is that they make competitors working together. And that's not only in the field of the stationary here, but that's all as well in the transport sector, because also we have a couple of demonstration activities for cars or for buses, where we have competitors, bus manufacturers, car manufacturers, working together specifically towards the market segment. What do we need to do to bring this forward? How do we bring this product into the hands of the customer? And that's really something unique for which I think a joint undertaking where the industry really is working together can realize.
To give you a little bit better understanding, maybe I can give some examples. Because in Germany we had during the last years the CALUX program, and we have developed some standards. And now it is very important that we also on the European level work together to implement these standards, for example, for communication. If Adrian wants to have a virtual power plant later on, he don't want to have an interface for Weiland, one for Bosch Boderos, one for BAXI. You want to have one interface, and it doesn't matter which technology you buy. So that means before we have to agree about these interface, that's something what we have done. Now we are in the phase to implement that on the European level. Also, there are regulations which are, even if we have a CE certification for the European Union, there are some specific hurdles in each country and differences. And together with all manufacturers, we have to work out these differences because we all have to deal with the same hurdles. And this is something what we have to do. And the example is, for example, the training of the installers. We have done a program for German installers. You can see that under calux.net. It's an electronic training, and something like that is also necessary for installers in other countries. Just to have a little bit an idea what is meant under these details.
When we're talking about this issue, of course, we can take a European perspective or we can take a local, national perspective. And really, the European perspective involves both. You have to take a good view at the national perspective. To go to the national perspective here, in terms of Great Britain, is there anything specifically of importance when we think of this stationary application of fuel cell technology? We're talking about instead of the traditional boiler using fuel cell technology. Is there any specific reason why Britain would be a good or perhaps a less optimal environment for that technology?
I think there's probably 3 things that are really critical for the UK market for fuel cells. One is it's got to be cheap. 2, it's got to be cheap. And 3, it's got to be cheap, of course. The serious point is the UK is a very price-sensitive market, and I think probably much more so than some of the other European markets that fuel cell developers are aiming at. Beyond that, I would say similar to all markets, you know, the product's got to be reliable and durable to overcome the sort of concerns that Guido talked about in terms of getting confidence among consumers, and I think utilities like ourselves have a key role to play there in terms of giving reassurance to customers, but also the products have to be proven in terms of their durability. And I think the third thing for the UK market is really finding products that are suitable for plug and play in the retrofit market. So it's going into existing properties, replacing boilers with the minimum of disruption for the customer, make it very straightforward for them to adopt this new technology. So those are the sort of things we'll be looking for from the product. I think in terms of the UK market and what makes it particularly attractive for this technology, it's a massive boiler market. I think there are something like 20 million gas boilers installed in the UK. The annual market is something over 1.5 million units. So it's a big old gas boiler market. And if you see the fuel cell as being a potential substitute product for the gas boiler, then that's a good starting point. Secondly, I think there is quite a supportive public policy environment for micro CHP. The first micro CHP products have been sold in the UK market for the past 3 or 4 years. There is a good feed-in tariff to support the adoption of micro CHP and fuel cells. There's a suitable grid connection standard. So some of the things that Guido talked about earlier in terms of the need for consistency across European markets, we've got some emerging standards in the UK market that are supportive to the technology and help us do installations of micro CHP with a minimum of bureaucracy.
But Adrian, I hope you agree that to achieve the future ERP standards of the European Commission, this is not possible to do that with just a boiler. You need something on top, maybe photovoltaic or solar thermy or heat pumps. And looking to these kind of technologies, they are more expensive. Therefore, the level in the future for fuel cell systems will not be the boiler, it will be a solar and boiler system, and I think then we are coming into a range which is more easier to get to, and I think within Innerfield we are preparing ourselves for the UK situation, because for Germany we have calculated a volume of fuel cells in 2020 of 75,000 systems, and we expected that will be 15% of the market, 15% of the total market. But under the point of view that we are looking to Europe, we can easily double the volume, and if we can double the volume, we can reduce the cost. Therefore, also for the UK, it will help a lot to launch the product in more than one European country to get down in cost and increase the volume.
Yeah, so agree totally on your point about gas boilers. You know, it's the standard product today, but you know, in 20 or 30 years' time, for sure, you know, the gas boiler is gone, and the question is which technology or technologies will be substituting those products in customers' homes. It's a range of different things that, you know, public policy is aimed at encouraging the use of in the UK, so heat pumps, biomass boilers, solar systems to supplement existing gas boiler systems, and of course micro CHP and fuel cells. So it's a question of how quickly those new technologies enter the market and really penetrate the market, and which ones offer the best solutions for customers. But totally agree, the gas boiler is expected to be phased out in the UK.
But this is something where Adrian can help a lot, because the fuel cells are very specific installations. If you look to boilers, you have more than 300 options to do an installation of a boiler. For fuel cells, you have just 2. And as better your personnel is trained, and as better you know how or where to install the fuel cell system, as more satisfied is the client, because it has higher operational efficiencies, and as faster we are getting into the market, because your staff knows where fits which technology, and if you're having a home between 8,000 and 18,000 kilowatt hours with a small roof area, solar is not possible, so micro CHP is very interesting. And if you're in that range of heat consumption over the year, then installing can be an option. But therefore, your staff needs to know exactly what are the conditions, and we need that program to establish that knowledge.
Allow me maybe just to complement one or two points on that. Europe, up to today, might change in the near future, is still consisting of the 27 individual member states. And what we see here, and we have two examples, one for in Germany and one for in the UK, is slightly different kind of market activities and market approaches. The fuel cells and fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking, I believe, is really a platform where we have to try to get all these different countries and objectives closer and closer together. As we have seen in several studies which we have ongoing, and also by the different projects we have the Colleagues project in Germany, and then we have the Innofield project that, let's say, on a European scale, is that really we have to use the strength of the European Union. Union means closely working together. Because if you look a little from a perspective point of view, each country has the same problem. Each country has the difficulty with efficiency, with renewables, with emissions. And we really have to work together. And we have a strategy. Some of the countries have a strategy. Germany, of course, together with UK, together with France, one of the leading countries to bring this forward. But the market, the strength of Europe is really in trying to get this activity rolled out over the whole of Europe. And that's why each of the individual member states, we have to make sure we're working closely and efficiently together with the money we still have.
This is why I get nervous when I hear plug and play, because, okay, who designed the USB? That is, are we going to use your integrating device or mine? It just opens up the question of what does it mean to say plug and play? Is it going to be different in every country? Or is it going to be what you're looking for, European regulations that allow you to say, okay, when we start installing these units, we can rely on every country to understand the principles of that installation, to agree with certification standards so they can say it's safe, it doesn't matter whether we're in the south of Europe or in the north, and to have informed, skilled people on the ground to install this stuff. If I could, though, roll this discussion out one step further, because I'm always, we talked about the Yogi Bear principle. There's honey, so everything's fine. It makes me nervous when I don't hear the larger message, which is, you mentioned this, a lot of money goes into energy, and it's basically, as fossil fuels, it's burned and gone. Reinvesting is a huge, important issue, particularly when I look at Europe from a Canadian perspective, or let's say Germany. Germany is so reliant on resources that come from outside the country that it would be scary for anyone from, well, where I am in Canada, to simply admit, oh yeah, we actually import, you know, some can pull the plug, turn off the supply, and we have a huge issue here. That is, we simply do not have this issue of whether it's affordable on the ground in England. We have this issue of, are we going to say it's not affordable yet until at some point we risk the stability of energy supply? We get into that immense economic crisis, which you mentioned our discussion, Japan is facing when they discover just how unreliable the grill can be. So could you address this issue? I think there is a problem here, and I think there is a bit of a tendency to say, oh, you know, things are fine because economically it's working right now, but it doesn't seem to me as if we have a strategy that is continually reinvesting into something of a scale that replaces the resources we're relying on right now. So what is Bert, you're the expert from the European community, what is your take on that?
Security of supply is indeed one of the key issues facing Europe, but where is it on the agenda from priority point of view? We are unfortunately kind of spoiled with the richness we have to be able to get so much money together and spend it. As I said before, it's €500 billion every year. About, I can be 1 million wrong, but that's about the volume of money. And we using that money, as you indicated, to buy fossil fuel to burn it. And what do? Next year, we do just the same. We spend the money, we burn the fuel, and it's gone. So if we would be able to use a part of that money, maybe we can't change from one day to another, obviously not. But if we can start shifting that thinking way to use that money to invest in renewable energies, capture the energy for at the moment when we need it, a problem which mankind never have successfully sufficiently successfully addressed, then we can help our economic motor back up and running. And that's really a key aspect, which is addressed at European scale. And I think the technology we all working for at this moment in time may be one of the cornerstones to bring this all forward.
We could continue, Adrian, on the same note. When we think about launching, implementing the stationary applications of fuel cells in the home. So it basically, to boil this down to a very pragmatic approach, it's like replacing the boiler. And we have the cost issue. We have also the political side, namely, even if we're not optimally using combined heat and power, even if we're simply burning fuel, the fuel cells are more effective. That is, already with the installation, there's a 30% advantage to using fuel cells. So this is already now. What I'm suggesting is this reduction of carbon emissions, is it not paying off enough to justify the added investment? Is it a question, I mean, the life scale of these units, you mentioned already, Guido, that in fact boilers are often replaced in what was the statistic you had? The boilers, what is the lifespan of a boiler in England?
In the UK, a boiler is more often replaced as in other countries.
Yeah.
Normally you have a boiler 15 years, and in the UK it's between 6 and 10 years.
So it's the frequency of replacement is another issue. It's a surprising thing here, but what I'm doing is I'm adding up factors that say, we're not rushing to do this, but is it because we're not appreciating the actual benefits? The carbon emission side would be one. That is a political issue, I agree. The other side is if you simply take the calculation of a price of a boiler, but you're in fact replacing one that has to be replaced every 6 years with one that will last longer, the calculation becomes different. So how do you view these issues?
Well, on the boiler replacement question, I guess as a retailer of boilers in the UK, we'd love if it was 6-year replacement cycle. I think it's probably a little bit longer than that, but probably shorter than other markets in Europe. But to address your question about how is that, those energy efficiency and sustainability converted into of fuel cells converted into something that we can sort of apply to influence customers' behaviour. So I think there is a mechanism to do that, and in the UK that is the feed-in tariff mechanism. So that's actually recognising the basket of benefits of fuel cells and micro CHP. There's environmental benefits, the security of supply benefits, eking out more out of the existing fuel supply, and it's turning that into an economic benefit for the customer. So taking that into account and the savings that the customer makes on their fuel bills by generating electricity very cheaply from natural gas, that thing has to repay the capital cost of the system in a reasonable amount of time. And that's pretty simple. And that's the way that, if we're lucky, that's the way that consumers will make their purchase decision. And if we're not lucky, they'll just make their decision on the basis of whatever's the cheapest thing at the time that the boiler breaks. So, that's the environment in which we are operating. Public policy is there to help stimulate the market. And operators like ourselves, being active in the boiler installation market in the UK, we have a role to play in terms of introducing new technologies to customers and making them aware of the benefits. But ultimately, it has to be a good deal for the customer. The customer is making the decision at the moment. The alternative is to legislate for the introduction of these new technologies. I think in the current economic environment, that is less likely. To obligate customers to take a fuel cell or some other higher cost energy efficiency product, but it's a possibility.
we're going to have to return to that note because this is exactly what Bert was saying. That is, we have a solution, but the problem is not large enough. On the ground scale here, and I'm trying to make this a little bit more controversial, you're providing technology which basically uses natural gas more effectively. So the interesting thing about this is you have Adrian next to you, and you turn around to him and you say, you know, we can install our technology and you'll sell less natural gas. You like it? There are some people who say, in fact, it increases his market. There are other people who say it's more effective. So how do you view this issue here? How do you view, from this economic perspective, the cooperation between the natural gas provider and your fuel cells?
The natural gas provider must have an interest in fuel cell technologies because if you look to the heating market, the homes are more insulated, so the gas demand in the homes is decreasing more and more. And when we can offer a technology making power and heat, you increase your gas supply again, and therefore there is an additional added value for gas companies. And we also know the objectives of the utilities, and this is very important. But to achieve these objectives, it is important to have demonstration projects like in a field to work together with other market partners, because we as manufacturers cannot by ourselves achieve low installation cost. It has to do a little bit with the local regulations, it has to do with the knowledge of the installer. Sure, it has to do with our documentation, how we tell the installer how to install the system, but this is something what we need jointly to develop to make sure that we have the best way and most cost-effective way for this installation. And therefore, it's also necessary that we discuss services. In the past, boilers were, let's say, very easy to do a service on. As more complex the technology is, as higher is the risk that something happens during the lifetime of the system. And we see that we have to provide warranties, longer warranty periods as we maybe do currently for boilers because of the complexity of the technology. But therefore, we need well-trained local installers who can take over this job and achieve our targets. And this is something what we only can do together to develop that.
If you allow me just to complement on that, you can see it from two different perspectives. The product is ready for the market, and I think with all the activities we are currently doing, we are almost there. Indeed, the product is ready for the market, but is the market ready for the product? And then all these aspects come into play. What is the supply chain? What is the servicing? And what is the benefit for the customer? Because it's ultimately the customer who is going to decide to buy this new type of product. Yeah. What is his benefit to do so? What is the driving force? And I come back to what I said before. What is his need? What is his problem he would like to tackle? Now, in some aspects, it's there because we talk about costs, about environment, about efficiency. That's all being covered. And if not, and again, I come back to what I said from the introduction, the government can be there to push this. It's called policy. Let's push this forward. Yeah, and in some aspects, it is about more efficient, more passive buildings. It's going in that direction. And just to expand a little what is happening on the transport sector, there, the Commission is proposing a directive to roll out the hydrogen infrastructure to help to push, to make sure the market is getting there. So I think it's really complementary to have both the government and the industry working hand in hand to make sure the product is ready for the market and the market is ready for the product.
Yeah, you already, Adrian, noted the old-fashioned boiler is kind of like the grandmother at home. You know she's not going to hold out that much longer. And the problem is she's the only person doing the cooking in the house. So someone has to retool. I'm still trying to get this to be a little bit more edgy, I suppose, and I'd like to refer to the longer-term issues, because we do have natural gas. It's a wonderful transitional technology as well, because we can actually move from simply burning fossil fuels to working with hydrogen technologies. It's a very important phase. But we have other issues, namely, we already mentioned, the supply. We are so dependent in this country, in many European countries. I know this makes me nervous. I believe it makes you nervous. But as soon as we move towards more renewables, as we are, let's say, on the North Sea, we have this huge issue of energy storage. So this is, of course, part of your expertise, working on structuring Europe as an energy community. Where are we in terms of the energy storage issue, and where should we be, in your opinion?
The energy storage on a whole is an issue which becomes more and more apparent. I think in many European member states, it's in a span of maybe even this winter that either the supply was almost at the maximum capacity, or the absorbing capacity for the production was too much. I mean, if it's a sunny afternoon on a Sunday, there is just too much solar energy, and if it's a cold Monday morning, there is just not so much supply. So I think politically, this becomes higher and higher on the agenda. What is happening there is that the grid management system sees its limits on managing the supply and demand on both sides. And you can buffer by storing. And the storage means you currently have available around so many. Hydro pumping is one. You have all kind of mechanical devices. You have electrochemical devices, batteries. But then hydrogen and fuel cells is one of the key options, specifically working closely with renewables. Renewables, take the wind, take the solar, take the hydropower. It's pretty straightforward to see all these elements feeding into an electrolyzer, making hydrogen, storing it in big tanks or even underground, which has already been proven and is working. So there is no issue. And once you need more electric energy, you put it back to a fuel cell. So this is really one of the options we have, but we have to elaborate. And again, I come here. Once we would have in Europe a major blackout, people will wake up and say, we have to do something about this. We will have to look forward, because it's not going to be the nuclear. It's not going to be the import of the crude oils or the natural gases. We have to become self-reliant in energy provision. And I believe that fuel cells and hydrogen can clearly contribute with that.
This plays in again to the issues that you were addressing, because as soon as you move beyond the boiler function of heat to electrical energy, you realize, can't cover that with a traditional boiler. So it opens up the debate. I'm afraid that we're running out of time here. Our moderators for the next talk are waiting nervously in the public. So I really almost have to cap the discussion now, unless I'm interrupting a short comment.
If you allow, a final word would be very nice. Let me take the opportunity to say thank you to everybody who participates on the Innerfield program, and especially Cogen Europe, who has taken over the coordination. That was a superb job, what they did, and I'm looking forward to a successful project. Thanks to everybody.
We're always happy as well. The energy providers, of course, they have resources that we do not have in this small fuel cell community, and any involvement from your part is a gift to the development of the whole industry. So thank you all. I've been talking to Bert de Colvenaer, who's the Executive Director of Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking. Their booth is C56 in that direction. Adrian Richardson, it was a surprise and a pleasure to talk to you from British Gas. Thank you for coming. And Guido Gummert, Managing Director of BAXI INNOTECH, we're on the stage tomorrow. Thank you very much, and thank you.